Okay, so we're going to be finishing up the last lesson on measurement, and it's going to be some word problems, and I'll show you exact strategies on how to solve these word problems. Question number one, or example number one, don't even read the question. I want you to underline or box in two things: the object, and if it's a surface area or volume question. Okay, so I can just skim this, and I know it's going to be a surface area question. And it's going to be the surface area of what object? Sphere. Yeah, because it says a soccer ball, it's going to be the surface area of a sphere. If you know the object and you know its surface area, you could get your formula, right? So you'd look at your formula sheet and you'd say, okay, so your surface areas are here. What is the surface area of a sphere? Surface area of sphere is equal to 4 pi r squared. So we're going to write that down. Then what you do is you go through the question and you say, what numbers can I fill in where? So you're going to look for different numbers that you could fill in. So what it says is the surface area of a soccer ball is approximately 250 square inches. So this 250, they say that that's the surface area of the soccer ball. So you take out that, and that's going to be 250. That is equal to 4 pi r squared. The question is going to be, what is the diameter? But the only thing we're able to manipulate right now to solve is we're going to be getting this radius by itself. So we need to get rid of this 4 pi. You can do it in one of two ways. You could divide both sides by 4 pi, or let's just calculate what 4 pi is in our calculators. So 4 pi would be 12.566. So let's write down that 250 is equal to 12.566 r squared. And you know that if the two numbers are next to each other, it's a multiplication. So to isolate r, you're going to divide both sides by 12.566. On your calculator, remember we want to use all of our decimals until the very end. So 250 divided by this number, which is 4 pi, gives you 19.849. Sorry, 894. And that is equal to r squared. And now you need to isolate r. Juan, what would I do to isolate r? How do you get rid of a square? Nope. What's the opposite of squaring? Square rooting. The opposite of squaring a number would be square rooting a number. So r is equal to the square root of our answer. Oops. And we would get, we're still not going to round, the radius is 4.46. And the question though was, what is the diameter? So McLeod, what do you want me to do with that answer? Multiply it by 2. So what you've just calculated on a soccer ball, you've just calculated the radius, which is 4.46. That's the distance halfway across the circle. The diameter is the entire distance. So whatever that answer is, multiply that by 2. Now we have our final answer that we could round. And it says it wants the rounding to what? To the nearest square inch. So, or sorry, to the nearest tenth of an inch. That would be 8.9. So diameter is equal to 8.9 inches. And remember, it wouldn't be squared because it's not an area. It wouldn't be cubed because it's not volume. It's just a measurement on the circle. Do the same thing for this. Box in the word surface area or volume, and then in the very first sentence, it gives you the shape that it wants. What 3D object does it want? Yes. So cone gets boxed in, and volume. That's your first step. That will tell you where to look on your formula sheet. What formula are you looking for? So we're going to be under the volume column, and we're looking for cone. So here's my volumes, and the volume of a cone is 1/3, so make sure we put that in a bracket, pi r squared h. That's the volume of a cone. So volume of a cone is equal to 1/3 pi r squared times the height. Now fill in what we know. So I'm going to read, and it says the volume of a cone of 564. That is the volume. So again, that's going to go on the left-hand side. So the volume of the cone is 564. That is equal to 1/3 pi. Let's see what else we have. They told us that the radius is 7. So that means that the 7 is the radius. So 7 squared. And what we are left with, which is what we're going to end up isolating, is height. And it actually says here, determine its height. That's the only variable that we're missing. So you could do the exact same thing that we did with sphere. It's this number times this times this. So let's figure out what that would be. So we're going to figure out 1/3 pi times 7 squared. Okay, that will give us 51.312. So 564 is equal to 51.312 times the height. Again, we're at the same spot as the previous problem. We need to isolate height. So get rid of that 51.312, and you're going to divide both sides by that number. And the height of this cone would be 564 divided by the answer that we had. And you get 10.99. It says it wants the answer to the nearest tenth, so we need a decimal here. Because this is a 9, I round that 0 up to a 1, so it's going to be 11.0. So the height would be 11.0, and units are centimeters. Okay, the last two questions. So those first two were similar, and these last two are going to be similar in style. Again, it gives us the shape, right? So, but in a lot of problems, it won't give you the shape. So we know it's a cone, and here it says surface area. So I want you to do the same thing as before. It's surface area and it's cone. Write the formula. So surface area, cone. Find that on your formula sheet. Justin, tell me what it is, the formula once you find it. Surface area of a cone. Perfect. Surface area of a cone is pi r squared plus pi rs. So this is what we're finding, the surface area. We know pi, this is radius. So we need to find the radius, and the radius is given. The radius is going to be 2. And so let's actually fill in what we have, and then we're going to be missing something. Be careful with s. So far it's pi r, no, we know the radius is 2. So pi 2 squared plus pi 2, and then S. This 7, is that H or S? Is that the height or the slant height of the cone? It's the height of the cone. This 7 here is the height of the cone. And remember, it's inside the cone. It's used for volume. The S is the slant height of the cone. In order to get that, we need this height here. We need what that slant height is. So what you need to be able to visualize is that there's actually a triangle within this cone. So the base of the triangle is 2. The height of the triangle is 7. And because it's a right angle triangle, we could do Pythagorean's theorem to figure out what the slant height is. So this is 7. This is 2. It's a 90-degree triangle. We know that across from the 90-degree angle is the hypotenuse, but that would be C for Pythagorean's theorem. So to find out what that slant height is, C squared equals A squared plus B squared. C squared equals 7 squared plus 2 squared. C squared equals 49 plus 4. C squared equals 53. And then isolate C by square rooting both sides of your equation. And you will get C is equal to the square root of 53. And that will give you what that slant height is. So square root of 53 is 7.28. Now I know what S is. So I could fill that in. I was missing that. You could enter this in one string on your calculator, but we're going to select that number because I don't want to enter the rounded number. So it's going to be pi, the radius, which was 2 squared, plus pi r, which was 2, and s, which was my slant height, which was that number there. Or you could have typed in at this point the square root of 53. And the surface area of this cone is going to be 58. What do they want it? Nearest square foot. So 58 square feet. Okay, the last question, it's going to be very similar. I want to see, first look at this, see if you could visualize, or actually let's get our formula first, and then you have to see if you could visualize a triangle in here. So what we are going to be calculating is volume, and it's going to be a square pyramid. So square means that the base is going to be 4 by 4. So that's going to be 4 as well. Okay, so a volume of a pyramid, you'd get that from your formula sheet. 1/3 big B times H, and we'll talk about again what big B is. Volume of pyramid is equal to 1/3. Angel, what's big B? Sorry? Yes, how did you get that? Yes, big B, you guys, is area of base. The base is a square, which is 4 by 4. She said that the area is 16, which is correct, or you could just enter here 4 times 4. And then what we need is the height. And an incorrect thing that students would do is they're going to say that the height of this pyramid is 6. This 6 is really which variable? Slant. Yeah, it's on the slant. It's on the surface. That 6 is used for surface area. We are doing volume though. So this 6 is the slant height. We need to figure out the height of this pyramid. So from the apex of the pyramid, if you were to draw a vertical line, it would go into the center of the base. And then there's a triangle there. So I don't know how many of you could visualize that triangle. You're sort of looking a bit in 3D. This is slightly off, but it's basically that would be the triangle. What would the base of this triangle be? Because it's not 4. Does anybody know what the base would be? If from here to here is 4, and this is halfway to the edge, what would it be? 2. Yeah, the base of the triangle is 2. So that would be the base, which would be 2. Okay. The slant height, now this is going to be C because it's the hypotenuse. That's 6. And then we're missing, you could either call it A or B. So Pythagorean's theorem is C squared equals A squared plus B squared. If you are, let's say, looking for A squared, you have to subtract B squared from both sides. It's always going to be, if you're looking for a side other than the hypotenuse, it's always going to be the hypotenuse, which is C squared, minus the other side. So A squared is equal to C squared is 6, B squared is 2, 6 squared is 36 minus 4. And that's going to give you 32. Square both sides. And you will have what A is. So the square root of 32 is 5.65. And remember, keep that answer. Now, A on my diagram would be representative of which variable? What did I just figure out? This was A, which is the height of your triangle. So the height of this triangle now, because we're doing volume, is 5.65. So the height is that what we just figured out. Volume of pyramid is equal to 1/3. 4 times 4 is 16. 5.65. Actually, we should have just entered it at that stage. Let's figure out what that is. The volume of this pyramid so 1/3. And then here you could put 4 by 4, or you could just do 16 multiplied by the height of the pyramid. We get that, and then we're able to round to the nearest cubic inch, so it would be 30 inches cubed. So volume of pyramid is equal to 30 inches cubed. Okay, I'm going to set up the first homework question with you. There's a lot of homework questions, so I'll take some off. You don't need to do all of these. You're just going to do some for practice. Okay, this object right here, so it doesn't say much, but basically you know that it's a cylinder and they give you volume. So when you're writing like which formula you're choosing, it's cylinder and volume. So let's write what the volume of a cylinder is. Pi r squared h. That's the volume of a cylinder. And then they give you the volume and they give you the height. So we substitute in what's given to us. So 219.0 is the volume. that's equal to pi r squared, and the height would be h. Okay, we're going to need to isolate that r squared. But what this is pi times r squared times 6.4. So I'm just going to figure out what pi times 6.4 is. So let's figure out what that number is. So pi, so that would be 20.106. So 219 is equal to 20.106 r squared. And now you do what we did in the other problems. Get rid of that 20 by dividing both sides. And then you need to get rid of this square by square rooting both sides. So I'll give you a minute to finish off that one. I want you to do these four. For the prism here, we'll just write the formula because I'm going to write it different. The volume of a prism, remember, is length times width times height. So they give us the volume. They give you length and width, and you're going to figure out what height is. So I want you to try these four objects. And then from here, I want you to do these two because these two are going to be box and surface area, and you need slant height. So you're going to do Pythagorean's theorem for each of these, right? You need to, these ones you need to get your triangles. So the base of this triangle, what would the base of this one be? If the entire distance is 14, what would the base of that be? 7. Yeah, the base of that is 7. The height is 24, and you are going to figure out what C is. Once you have C, you have the slant height. So do number 8. You don't have to worry about 16. Do 11, and you don't have to worry about 12. If you wanted extra practice, you could do those, but they're just a bit redundant. You could do either one of these. So you could say 8 and not 9, or 9, not 8.